Hello and welcome to another Microsoft Excel for Accounting video tutorial where we're going to show you how to journalize and post to ledgers and then check your accuracy with a trial balance. So we're going to be working on Chapter 4, Unit 7, question number 5. So we're going to do that question together. Some of it I've done ahead of time just to make the video tutorial a little bit quicker. So let's get started. Page 132, it says you need to journalize the February transactions using accounts from the chart of accounts. So I've already set up all these charts. So you need to go into your ledgers and you need to label them cash, just like you see in the blue box on page 132. Cash is 100, accounts receivable back contractors is, and this should say back contractors. And once you get used to it, it is perfectly acceptable to go AR for accounts receivable, and down here to go AP for accounts payable. But accounts payable in this situation was particular to Ajax Motors. So pause the video and set this up. You should be seeing cash 100, AR back contractors 101, office equipment 141, automobile 142, Ajax Motors 200, M Conway Capital 300, fees earned 400, rent 507, salaries, and this should be rent expense, salaries expense for 508, telephone expense for 510. Pause the video, get that done, check to make sure you got it right. All right, now that you're back, let's start journalizing. So just below the chart of accounts in blue, at the bottom of the page on page 132, it says February 1, M. Conway invested $40,000 cash in an architectural consulting business. Now when journalizing, we always put the debit first. So if he invested $40,000, that means he's putting $40,000 into cash. And it goes into debit at $40,000. And that means it must have a credit of $40,000. Now if he's investing it, that is going to increase your capital. So then we've got M Conway Capital. Now I've already put the dates in here just to make this video a little bit quicker. And so 40,000, 40,000, M Conway. Now the PR, the journal numbers. Cash is 100 and it's 300. Then we've got to have your particulars. So invested in company. Now back to the textbook. February 2 bought office equipment for $3,000. So that's also an investment in the company, but in an asset. So we're going to put in for office equipment, and that is $3,000. And it must be a debit of $3,000. And so that's where we have to pay for it. Now the key is you need to establish whether you're paying cash or it's going into accounts payable. So it says check 1, so that is cash. And that is your particular. Now office equipment was 141 and cash, as we know, is 100. Back to the textbook. February 3 bought an automobile for the business from Ajax Motors Limited on credit. The price was $21,000. So automobile, we know it's 21,000. We know there must be a reciprocal transaction of 21,000, and it says it was on credit. So that's going to be AP Ajax Motors. And the particular is invoice 7469. Now we go down to February 4th in our textbook. Received $1,500 for services provided to a customer. Sales slip 1. So that means that we've earned some fees. So that's going to be fees earned, and it's also going to be cash because it says sales slip, so it's not on credit. The debit is going to be cash because money coming in is a debit, and it was for 1,500. A reciprocal transaction of 1,500, and that is fees earned. And sales slip number 1. Now cash, as we know, is 100, and fees earned is 400. And I kind of forgot up here, so automobile is 142, and accounts payable is 200. Now we're looking at February 5th, at the top of the page on 133, sent invoice 1 for $1,000 to back contractors for services. So this is another fees earned, but we're receiving the money in a different way. So we sent the invoice, so it's an accounts receivable. So I'll just go AR, back contractors, and accounts receivable, the number is 101, and it was for $1,000 in the debit. And fees earned is always a credit, and we know that because fees earned are good for owner's equity, which is a credit. So that's how you memorize that and remember that. Now you will notice that the credit is always indented, and I've got mine all set up to do that ahead of time. So, but if you don't, that's how you do it here. This is how you push it back, that's how you indent. So you just go from there. All right, back contractors, and it's invoice number 1. Now just to shorten this video, I've got some of this done ahead of time. So let's check this out, and we'll start to look at the next one. February 5th again, paid rent $1,600, check number 2. So rent is an expense. It should be actually rent expense. And $1,600 is a debit. And now we're paying for it ourselves, so it's coming out of our cash. So it's a credit in cash. And there's your particular. Salaries, expense is always a debit. It's for $1,400, and it comes out of cash. Check number 3. Telephone expense out of $510 for $150, and it comes out of cash, so it's a credit in cash, and paid for that with check number 4. So that is how you journalize. Now we're going to get on to posting to the ledger. You always start with a debit first. So cash is going to go 40,000. And our particular is invested in the company. And this J1 comes from, because it is the page 1 of the journal. So you just put J1 for that, and you put the date in, and then you go equals, and you take that. The debit or the credit is, it's put in a debit, so you just put DR for debit. Now, that is this one done. I usually bold it just to make sure that I know that I've now posted it. M Conway Capital has to increase, so that's a 300. Invested 40,000 equals that 40,000. Now this one's a credit, so we're going to just put CR. And we need the date, February 1. Then I'm going to go up to the top, and I'm going to go Control B to bold that to know that I've now posted it to the ledger. Office equipment, 141 for $3,000 in a debit. $3,000. You went equal, click on that one to get it there. It's a debit, DR, and bought equipment on check one. I'll bold that to show that I've done it. And then cash, $3,000 has got to go out. Okay, so we're going to head over to here, and we're going to put in $3,000. Now here we've got to go equals this minus this. Now, this is where a lot of people make a mistake. They think, oh, we just put in a credit, so we have to do CR. The DR, or debit, is telling us that the balance is a debit. So even though you put in a credit, the balance is a debit. It stays as a DR. So there's my $3,000 in here. Control B to say that I've put that in. And it should be Control C is check one, and Control V. All right, the next one, automobile, $21,000 in 142, and it's invoice. So I'm just going to go Control C and move down to automobile, and we paste it there. We got 21,000 equals that, and the automobile, Control B, is posted, and then we got to check to make sure that we have the same thing in our accounts payable, which is 200. And accounts payable is a credit, 21. So that is a CR, and that is equals 21,000. So you're starting to understand how to post. I'm not going to post every single one of these, but what I am going to do is I'm going to move to a new one that where it's completed, and we'll take a moment to check to make sure it works. So I'm just going to move over to this one, which is a finished version of it. And so cash, you should finish with 35,300. Accounts receivable should finish with 1,000. Office equipment, 3,000 in a debit. Automobile, 21,000 in a debit. Accounts payable, 21,000 credit. M. Conway Capital, 40,000 in a credit. Fees earned, 2,500. Rent, 1,600 in a debit. Salaries, 1,450 in a debit. And telephone, 150. Now, the trial balance. We're going to just redo this trial balance so that you get a sense of how to do it. We could type the numbers in by just looking at it here, but when you find a mistake and then you go back and correct the mistake, it makes a lot more sense to actually just use cell references. So if I go equals, click on there. And if we pay attention to this, we know that it goes in this column. If it says credit, it goes in that column. Then I'm going to go equals for accounts receivable. Enter. Equals office equipment. Enter. Equals automobile. Enter. Accounts payable. Now we know accounts payable is a credit, so I'm going to move over there and I'm going to go equals. Accounts payable is a credit. Equals the capital, M. Conway Capital. Enter. Fees earned is also a credit. So we're going to go equals. And then rent is a debit. So I'm going to move back over to the other side. Equals. Salary equals. And telephone expense equals. Enter. From here, you want to auto sum. So I'm going to auto sum this entire column, and then I could auto sum that, or easier is just grab that green dot and drag it over. Now here's your check to make sure that you did it right. They must be equal. If they're not equal, 63,500 is the correct answer. And that is how you journalize using a regular journal and then post to the ledger, and then checking your accuracy with a trial balance. Thanks for watching.